Here in chapter 9, we will look at if sentences again, but this time we will use comparison functions. That's mainly used when you have a string of figures or numbers and you want to compare them. One number, is this number equal to another number, or if this number is bigger or equal to something else, and so on. So mainly when you combine numbers and you want to compare the size and what is bigger and have all these logical functions. Hey and welcome here. I'm Torkild Brunsnes, and this is Python Learning by Doing. I strongly believe that learning by doing, that's the way that works the best. It is for me, I can tell you. So try to follow this, these chapters here, and do what I'm showing on the screen. Follow it on your own computer. And when you have gone through all the different chapters, I promise you, you will be an excellent programmer. Well, let's grab a cup of coffee. And then let's just get going. To illustrate this comparison function combined with if sentences, we will make a little function, a little piece of program that can be called. And what it will do, this piece of program, is we enter 3 numbers, and then it has to return to us which of these 3 numbers is the biggest. So what we do here to start a function is always the def, and we call it max underscore number, max number. And then we have a parenthesis and we say number 1, number 2, and number 3. That's what we have. And then we say if number 1 is, and now we use the bigger and equal to number 2, and then we say number 1 again is bigger than and or equal to, and then it will become number 3. Then we say return number 1 as the result. But then if, or else if, if that's not the case, now we take the number 2 and compare and say if that is bigger or equal to number 1 and number 2 is bigger or equal to number 3, then return number 2. And you might pay attention here that I use a return function, and that means if the first condition comes true, then the function ends here because it meets a return function. And remember, you cannot have anything after a return function. So if it meets that condition, then it will already stop to run the function here. That's why we use a return function here. And then we can say else if number 3, or we can just say else. We can simply just say else here because we don't have to write the condition. So we say else and then return and then number 3. That's the last one. That's our function. And then we go out of the function and then we simply say print And then we call the function here, and it was max number. And then we say, we give it some values here. So we can say 345, 567, and 23. Okay? So these are our numbers. So we have a function up here, and down here we will call the function max number, ask it to print the largest of these three numbers. So let's run it. Oh yeah, we did the same error again. It's the syntax error we get here. We're missing the colon here. So we need to put that after. We did that in another video too. And we need it up here in the first line too. Okay, it should run now. And you see here, now it returns 567 as the largest number. And we can try to put some zeros after the last one here. So that's the biggest. We try to run it again. And 2300 is the largest number. So we have different syntaxes we can use for comparison here. Let me just write some of them down here. So these two here, oh sorry, that means equal to. Oh. Let's just do it again. So we say and that is equal to. It's not easy to write here because it does automatic correct. And then we have the greater than. And we have the smaller than. And then we have that's greater or equal to. And then we have the smaller and equal to. My gosh, this is a nightmare to write in when you're not writing code. And then we have this one here. That's different from. So these are basically the different comparison tools that we have in the toolbox here that we can use in if sentences. But it all works like we've just done in this example. So let's try to use some of these different arithmetic functions. We can make a little calculator again, but this time here we will make it a calculator that takes two numbers. So we define two variables, one for number 1 and one for number 2. And then we make a third variable, and that variable will ask for the operator or the operand. Do we want to use plus, minus, division, multiplication? But we will ask it for that, and we enter that as well. And then we use a lot of if sentences based on if there is a plus, then take the two numbers and add them together and print that out. Else if there is a minus, take number 1 minus number 2 and print the result. Else if, and so on. I hope you can start already to imagine how a program like this would look like. So we need to start with collecting some inputs, these two numbers, and then the operand. So let's say number 1. We define that variable and say that equals to. And then we will say input. No, we need to use float because we will use a number here, and it could in principle be a decimal number. So we need to use the float function. You remember we could either use integer for whole numbers or float for decimal numbers. So we will use a float, and then we will say input, and then we can say some text here. We will ask enter the first number. Float input, enter the first number. And we can continue this here. We can copy that 2 times. Oh. Well. And we do it once more. Okay. And the second variable here will be the operand. We'll just call that OP. And float, that's not a float in this case here. Because it's... And we will just say here, enter the operand. Or operator. What do we call it? I don't know what's called. And then we use number 2 down here. Float input, enter the, and it will be the second number. So that's kind of the input side. And now we need some if sentences. So we will start saying if, and now we need to look at what is the operator that has been put in. So if OP variable, and then we say equals, that's 2 of these, and then we will say, let's start with plus. Then we can say print, if that's true, print number 1 variable plus number 2. We simply summarize these two. So that was the first option. And then we can say if, and we'll just copy all this here, that's easier. So Control C, and we say Control V here again. And we could do a Control V. We need it 3 times, except it's an else if. And it's else if. So if is a plus, and see here, it already give me these. I'm about to do the same mistake as we did in the last exercise. I need the colon. Else if, it's already telling me with the red marking. So else if it's minus, then we will say print number 1 minus number 2. And then we will say if it's a multiplication, then multiply. We will actually do the same once again, because we also have the option that people type something in that is not a true operator. So we want the last option, the else if, to say this is an invalid operator or something like that. You typed in an invalid operator. So let's do one more else if here. So else if, and then we use a division, then number 1 divided by number 2. Okay, and then we will say else colon, and we will say print you entered an invalid operator. And then we can give a service message and say plus, minus, multiplication, and division are valid. Like that. Okay, we have a little program here, so let's see if that works. Let's try to run it. And there is a fault code. Yeah, and it's already yelling at me what it is. You can see the little red line here. You're missing a colon again. I keep forgetting those. So let's see. It should run now. And then it asks for the first number, and we say 45, and we say 5. Oh, yeah, now I made the error. It should have been an operator, and I typed a number in. So now it should give me the error message. You entered an invalid operator, and then it gives me which ones are valid. So let's try it again. We run it again. That was actually good. So enter the first number, 67. We can say we want to divide, and we divide by 5. 13.4. So and we can try with other operators as well. Let's say 45. Oh, get it. So 45, and we can say multiplied by 67. 3015. So it works. So we have a sneaky little calculator here, very easy to make. That concludes this chapter of Python Learning by Doing. Make sure that you follow all the following chapters and go through the entire series. Also make sure to hit both the like and the subscribe buttons, because that would help me to keep creating programs like this. So thank you for doing that. And here after this, there will be a link on the screen, and that will be to the next episode in this series of 26 videos. So take another cup of coffee and get ready for the next episode.